to join and get settled before we get started here in this iteration of Clinical Research Connections. All right. All right. Looks like joining is slowed down a little bit and we are at about a minute after. So I will go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to the May session of Clinical Research Connections. Thank you for joining. I hope that you're all enjoying the first bit of sunshine we've gotten in a while. So I will go ahead and start out with a couple of polls just to get to know our audience a little bit better. And if you could all reply to that poll. If you have any trouble seeing it, please message us in the chat. But just tell us a little bit about your role in our research community. I'll give everybody just a moment to answer that. Okay. And it looks like we have a strong showing from research administration and regulatory, as well as some coordinator folks and some folks from finance or other roles. And now I'll go ahead and ask one more poll question about how long you have been involved in clinical research at the university. And while everybody takes a moment to answer that, I'll just go over our agenda for today. Following the polls, we'll hear from Allison Lakin for a quick update. Rashonda Franklin is going to talk to us about Trinetics. Avery McGuire is going to speak about HIPAA from the HIPAA and Privacy Office. And then we'll have some updates regarding the Recruitment Center and social media from Ben Achelier and Jema Bettis, followed by some closeout notes. And I'll be sharing some links about how to register for upcoming sessions for Clinical Research Connections and where you can find these slides and recordings for these and for past iterations. So to share the results of this poll, it looks like we have a strong response from folks who have been with the CU, involved in clinical research at the university for over 5 years. Maybe we need to add a 10-year category. So thank you very much for joining. So I will go ahead and hand it off to Allison Lakin for a quick update.
Okay. Many thanks. Hi, everybody. For those of you who may remember, because I think Katie Nearing has spoken to this group before. So Katie Nearing and Jody Waterhouse are doing a series of what they're calling roadshows into the community to promote and encourage older adults to get involved in clinical research. There are 2 roadshows coming up. They have slightly different focus. Each one has a slightly different focus. So the first one that I think is coming up in June is relates to aging and fitness. So if you have protocols that you think would be that are enrolling and would be a good fit for that group, then please reach out to Jody Waterhouse and Katie Nearing, and they'd love to connect on being able to advertise and support your research. The following one that I think is a little later, sorry, I don't have the dates, is more on technology and is focused on use of technology in an aging community, in an older age community. So again, if you've got any research studies that you're looking to recruit into that may fit with that roadshow, if you could, if you feel comfortable, you can either reach out to me or you can reach out to them and make the connection. And they would love to promote your studies. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Allison. So now I will hand it over to Rashonda Franklin to discuss Trinetics. Is Rashonda with us?
Rashonda is not, but I am. So
Thanks, Ian. Sorry about that.
no worries. I work with Rashonda in the research informatics office for a group called Health Data Compass. So we are the team that manages the clinical data warehouse for the medical campus. We host data from UC Health, we work in partnership with Children's Hospital, and we also have some data from CU Med, our physicians group. And then in addition, we also get data from the state, so vaccination data, death index data, so on and so forth. And we work with our CMS vendor for all payer claims data as well. So we've got quite a rich data set that is available for researchers. And I give all of that because I don't know how many of you here know who I am or who Compass is. So pardon me if I'm talking down to the audience. I just want to make sure we're on the same page. So the Health Data Compass is divided into two groups. Half the group are kind of engineering, cloud engineering, and all of this because we're fully loaded into Google Cloud. The other half are the data delivery team. And the managers for the data delivery team, folks, some of you might know, is Michelle Edelman, Rashonda Franklin, who was invited to join today, and Kelly Hodge. And all three of those guys are complete experts at Trinetics and far more qualified to do this than I am. But also all three of them are in an all-day training today. So hence you've got me. I'm going to give you a walkthrough of the system, sort of an overview of what it is and how it works. I'm happy to take any questions. What we might find is if you've got really detailed questions, I will write them down and I will get answers back to you. So if that's the case and things pop up, feel free to drop questions into the chat and then I can screen capture them and send them to the team. What's also important to know is that Compass does a lot of orientations and trainings for the systems that we manage. So Trinetics is one of multiple tools that we offer to the campus for people to do cohort discovery. So if this looks like something that is interesting to you and you want to know more, or you think it might be interesting to some PIs you work with, and you think they would want to know more, then just get in touch with us at Health Data Compass. We're easy enough to track down, and we're more than happy to do small group demonstrations and walkthroughs or one-on-one hand-over-hand walkthroughs for sort of a supported self-service for cohort discovery. All of the data are in this are de-identified. So if you are just genuinely curious and you just want to go in and play and poke around, we can also do that. All you got to do is get in touch and we can get you, everything is linked to your CU Anschutz email address. So you'll be able to get in touch with us. We can activate your account and then you can log in and either just go explore or get in touch with us and we can walk through some questions that might be interesting to you. Okay. So everybody can see the Trinetics screen here. I'm going to turn my camera off so that we can focus on this. All right, so we're going to log in with our Anschutz credentials, and you'll see here's asking for a username and password. Come here, you. That's Anschutz, and it's going to recognize that straight away. Okay, so without me doing anything, as soon as I tell it I'm at Anschutz, it will push over to our single sign-on options. Clicking login, we'll go to Trinetics. What you'll often find when you're logging in for the first time is it's going to bump through the university, so it'll bounce to a second layer of login protection where you will then log in with your university username and password. So what you see here is not exactly what you will see when you log in. I see certain extra things because I'm a site admin. Okay, so I can see all of the studies that folks are running in TriNetX right now, hundreds and hundreds of studies going on. But when you come in, you'll have your open studies here. You'll see this box at the top. If you haven't got one, this will be blank. You'll be able to look through. So one of the options that TriNetX offers to the university in exchange for sharing our data is this what's called Trial Connect. This is managed by Ben's office in the Office of Research. This is an opportunity for our industry partners and pharmaceutical companies, biotech companies, to search through the TriNetX de-identified data nationwide, then identify sites that might be interested in working on clinical trials. So we can see there's the list of clinical trials that we've been invited to join. Some we join, some we don't. Here's all the information in the network on this Browse Network button. And there's a number of options you can explore here. You'll see it this constantly at the top, this network button, okay? Down here is UC Health. That's our local hospital partner, okay? 3,667,000 patients. If you want to, you can limit your searches to just exploring our local population. This is obviously really useful. If you want to narrow it down into department and specific sort of sub-locations, that's on its way. That is coming soon to TriNetX. There's also what they call the research network. So we belong to a part of the research network with 80 different healthcare organizations. So you can search and you could do de-identified cohort discoveries, case controls, observational studies on a patient population of up to almost 120 million patients, okay? So these are some of the options available to you, but let's look at studies. This is where you guys would come in. So the first thing you do, create a new study. And then this is where you can fill out all of your details, okay? Something easily forgettable. These are required. This is just documented for what the system's being used for. The rest of it is optional, okay? So we're just going to explore patient populations. So you can put all of these things in here, your target population, what you're looking for. And this is all just for our own housekeeping. We don't really collect this level of information at Anschutz. Okay, and then when you're ready, you can create your query. And again, at the top here, pick your network. Do you want to look at all 120 million patients online, or do you just want to look at UC Health? All right, so what we're going to do to make my life easier is we're going to go to one. Here's one I built earlier. And we'll do UC Health only, okay? So what we can do here is we start selecting and building our cohorts, okay? So I've said here, I must have, on my group 1, I want to have influenza and pneumonia or pulmonary embolism. How do we do that? Well, you can click here. You can see your entire patient population, the demographics, diagnoses, procedures, medications, labs. We're loading genomics data now. And then very broad brushstrokes visits data. These are going to get more detailed over time. This is part of what's coming soon. Right now, searching on these is a little bit limiting. Demographics is really, this is just where we're going to narrow down if we're looking at racial or ethnic delimiters on our population. Diagnoses, you can see there's a fairly rich that ICD-10 is in here. You can also search for ICD-9 if you're looking back in data sets pre-2015. And each one of these is a drop-down menu. So let's look in endocrine. We can go into the old classic diabetes, and then all of our sub codes down here. So let's see, we've got type 2 diabetes. Right, so you can dig down into all of these. In many cases, all of you know this, in many cases, you're not going to want to have to drill right down into these specific subs. You can just select all of your type 2 diabetes here, or if you want to, just pick the parent code and it will harvest everything for you, okay? Add that to our query. And we can say must have this, okay? You can also then say, I don't want it to have. So standard ones we might say is we often don't want patients who have site of pregnancy or psychiatric or behavioral health indications, because consenting can be problematic. So you can filter those out should you so wish. Okay. For fun, I've also thrown in here, let's exclude patients who are on dialysis, right? All of these you'll see, it can be psychiatry or dialysis, or we can make these AND gates if we want to make a really strict limiting criteria. We can reorder them. So we can have, they cannot have CPT 101 2681 or this one, and this one, or this one. So we can get quite fine-grained delimiters on our patient cohorts. And what you'll see underneath is we can also create more than one group. So rather than looking at individual groups of patients, we can then combine groups of patients in order to create our cohort. So here I'm saying group 1, I've asked it to bring me influenza or pulmonary embolism. Group 2 is our diabetes cohort from up here. Get rid of that. I don't want any of these patients to fall into this category here. Now, before you do anything, you need to know how many patients you've got, obviously. So we tell it, count the patients for me. So within UC Health, within our total records, 33,400 patients. If that's the scale that is useful to you, and probably 33,000 patients is pretty handy, you can go for it. But this is pretty useful for you to be able to start noodling around with your inclusion and exclusion criteria, okay? Because you might find really, really small patient populations, and by changing the way you're asking it to delimit your patients, you can increase the size of the population. Okay, there's pros and cons to that, obviously. The first one is the more patients you've got in a data set, the more types of analyses or the richer your research question can be. The other problem is you start to introduce noise, okay? But I think that's one of the beauties we've got here is it does allow you this pretty fine-grained control, so you're at least aware of what noise you're introducing into your query when you're building it. Each time you hit count patients, you're going to see this list on the left starts to populate, okay? It's really important when you're playing with this that you name these. So we'll say this is our UC Health cohort, all right? Because it's just going to say unnamed, unnamed, unnamed. If I'm not interested in trying to reconsent patients and I wanted to look at this on our nationwide cohort, well, then I could pick my research. Right, so now I'm looking at 80 healthcare organizations. And when I tell it to count patients, it's going to take a little while because it's now counting through over 100 million people. Well, now I've got 900,000 patients in my cohort. But again, it's just popped up here on the right. It's let me know what it is, and I can say this is my USA cohort. All right. Now, because we don't want to take all day watching little wheels spin, let's keep this at our UC Health cohort because everything's going to run a bit faster. Once we say, okay, I got 33,000 patients for this data set, that could be useful. What do I know about this? Well, there's some options on the left-hand side. HCOs, well, there's one of them, so we don't need to worry about that, but we can explore the cohorts. Let's hit run. And it will, it should, it did literally 10 minutes ago. There it is. It will run through. And it will pull these data for you. So there we go. Now we can see our demographics data, right? Obviously skewing more elderly, given the criteria we asked for. This is to be expected. We've got our female, male, and unknown boxes at the top. So we can isolate these and look at them. We can make it grouped or stacked. If you want to snap a picture of it and steal the cohort, you can do. You press this camera button. Here's our basic information about our cohort. So kind of a mini table 1. We can also learn about our diagnoses, procedures. Okay, it breaks it all down for us. So this is not super useful, obviously, because these are the ontologies we're given, but it provides you some information you can then drill down into. Okay, all of these drop-down menus will take you further and further in to try and understand your cohort a little bit better. So this is pretty just broad discovery. You know, in my world, this is where we would sit down with our subject matter expert, who might be our PI. we would sit down with our statistician and say, do these data look the way we expect them to, knowing what we know about our patient population? We can drill down into labs, and you can start searching on labs if you want to. You can look at when were the labs pulled, 2 years ago to 3 months ago, okay? Omics data is coming on in, regional distribution is currently locked, we're working on that one. Thinking about how to drill down further into these again, so we've got the time bindings that you could put onto it. Other options here for our Brooks's Magic Invented cohort. Again, analyze criteria. So we can start to drill down into these, select all, and oh, I hit cancel by mistake. I probably didn't want to do that. Run. Right, how is my cohort being built? Again, not a great example because this is a really, really simple cohort that I've built, but this is how you think, those of you who are familiar with cohort diagrams can see how it starts to filter out. So we get down to where we are, quote unquote, losing patients. So in a really complicated cohort where it's much smaller than you think it should be, this is where you would be able to drill down and see, oh, well, we lost 82 or 78% of our patients due to dialysis procedures. Well, maybe we don't want to use the broad brushstrokes of dialysis. We want to drill down into some sub-CPTs, or maybe we can refine our query to include dialysis. And again, to the researchers in the room, I apologize that that's a really trite example, but this is the quick one I built for us to do this today. Question in the audience. Will regional breakdown show breakdown of patient counts by UC Health site or region? Yes, Stacey, that is our hope. So we can break it down into north, south, and the other hospital sites. That's what we're trying to get to. And that's what they're promising we will be able to do. So rate of arrival, what have we got here? This is if you're thinking of accruing patients, because what we'll show at the end of this is that it's possible to request to download these data, and it's possible to request to download these data with identifiers. So if you're doing a clinical trial that involves recruitment, we can see, well, we're expecting 590 patients a month over the next year, okay? And there's our trend, probably, I'm guessing that might be a seasonal spikes on that. And then finally, sort of summary statistics, if you want to explore. So some of these, depending on the types of questions you're asking, the queries that you're asking, can be useful for snapshots for manuscripts. I know multiple groups who have written very well received manuscripts in creditable journals using only Trinetics for their query and for their analytics, right? I would obviously strongly suggest that you work with a professional statistician if you're going to be asking complex queries of our data, because EHR data are notoriously difficult to work with. But then there's also a variety of analytics that are pre-built into the system for you to explore. All right. So that is, and we can go back here. There's ways that you can drill down into exploring the cohort to time bind it for you to say, I don't want all of the data here. I just need to know what's going on in the last 6 months or the last 12 months. I'm only interested in the following classes of drugs or the following lab values, so on and so forth. It's really quite a powerful tool for refining cohorts. And then at the end of the day, once you think you've got everything you want, you're able to request the data set. So I say, I want my UC Health cohort, and I can send a request through. And then this will come to our group, and then it will be authorized for your download. If you want the de-identified data, that's reasonably straightforward. But of course, de-identified data can be somewhat limiting because there is no spatio, there are much fewer strong spatio-temporal connections between the data, right? It's easy to lose which patient is which when you've got a table for patients, table for encounters, table for procedures. It's much harder to link those together. There's also no dates beyond a year. So trying to find your time sequence or seasonality data is really, really hard. So what we also offer is the ability to download the identified data and that counts as a normal Health Data Compass request. Those of you who've worked with us before will know that you submit those requests to us along with your IRB approval to do this work, and then it will go to our Security and Compliance Committee, which is made up of our stakeholder organizations. And if they agree that the data, the research is necessary and the protections are in place for the data security and patient privacy, we can then release those data to you. Sometimes you'll get these data as a spreadsheet, which can be handy. In other cases, the data are too big for a spreadsheet, so we'll present it as a relational database. And again, in those instances, we always say, work with your statistician. So that's a whistle-stop tour of TriNetX. This is one of two big query tools we have. The other tool we've just launched recently is a tool that was created by the CTSA network called Leaf, which is a data browser. It's broadly similar to TriNetX, so which raises the questions about will we maintain both of these moving forward? And I think that discussion is still to be determined. They both eat the same data source, but TriNetX does offer this really beautiful user interface. It is a nationwide network, so you can look at your data within the context of the entire US. And it has this increasingly growing suite of analytic tools built into it for cohort comparisons and cohort discovery, so on and so forth. So I don't know whether we'll keep both running, but both are currently available to explore the CUAMC's data. Cheers.
Thank you so much, Ian. I have a couple of questions, and if anybody else has questions, please feel free to jump in. How do we go about getting access to TriNetX? Or is it automatically the single sign-on?
Yeah, absolutely. All you have to do, the single sign-on is managed in the back end, so there's nothing you guys need to worry about there. That's between us and IT. And all of our systems are built like that. That's just part of our HIPAA compliance. All you have to do is email Roshanda Franklin at cuanschutz.edu or Health Data Compass at cuanschutz.edu. You can find us at healthdatacompass.org. You can find us by searching in the University of Colorado website. You can find us on the Research Informatics Office webpage. There are multiple ways to get to Health Data Compass, and any one of them will end up at the right person who will facilitate your access and then be your tour guide to the system should you need one.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And could you tell us a little bit about the costs associated with limited data set requests and the timelines for requesting those?
Currently free. We are moving to a paid model, most likely on the 1st of July at the beginning of fiscal year 24. For these sorts of requests, they should remain free. Or there may well be a nominal charge of, $100 or something like that associated with it. But the whole point of offering these self-service tools, there you go, this is what happens. It takes a while. Let me just screen share again so you can see this. There you go. So your data request is sent. It has collated those data and it has submitted it to us. So this submitted is to Health Data Compass, and it's in process because one of my people will now receive that request and then be in touch with me like, hey, you sure you want this? This is de-identified. Here are the caveats of de-identified data, so on and so forth. So the whole point of having these self-service tools is that we want to facilitate your access to research data in the, obviously, compliance, IT security, operational security, patient privacy is always paramount. But within those caveats, we want to facilitate your access to data so that you don't have to wait for Health Data Compass, right? We get probably 10 to 15 requests for data every week. We turn over about 1 per day, but you can see if we're getting 10 a week and we get out 5 a week or 6 or 7 a week, that's a backlog, right? You have to wait to get data out from us. We do everything we can to minimize that backlog and those delays. And I think we are now at a reasonable delay of 6 to 8 weeks for very large data sets. But really, the closer we can get you to the data, the faster you can do at least the discovery and base analysis for, posters, presentations, student projects and things like that. But like I say, I have actually worked with entire research groups who have published very quite high quality journal articles based purely from being able to get into Trinetics. So.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And then finally, do you have any recommendations regarding the IRB application process? Should we talk to Health Data Compass before we apply for IRB approval?
I'm glad you asked, Erin. I should have thought to actually prompt that at the beginning. That's yes. If possible, please come to Compass while you are doing your IRB application, and then we can all work together. The biggest delay in getting data in the system as it's currently designed is an IRB is written and approved. Compass receives that. There's then a discussion about, are you sure you really need all these data? Because most people say, I want all the data. And I got 4.3 petabytes of data, 4,300 terabytes of data. You really don't want all of that. Billions of observations, billions of medications. We need to delimit these things down. That then takes time to revise the IRB. It then goes all the way through the process and it goes to the Security and Compliance Committee, who may also then have questions, and it goes right back to the beginning. And you're stuck in that let's approve the paperwork cycle, right? What we want to do is get everybody right at the beginning. Let's have these conversations at the same time as we're working with the IRB and the SEC on this. And a big shout out to Alison and her team for really facilitating those discussions. We're also working with Dr. Carlson and the CCTSI. There's a group within that called the Center for Innovative Design and Analysis, known as CEDA, who are biostatisticians, study design experts. 4 of those guys are now onboarded into Compass as well. And we're trying to figure out the right way to do kind of a joint intake process so that all of our research questions are being filtered through the same pathway, and we can get all of the ducks lined up at the beginning instead of going on a duck hunt later in the process. So thank you, Erin. Yes, please talk to us as soon as you can.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ian. Any other questions from the audience? All right. Well, thank you again for this very helpful presentation. Really appreciate it, Ian.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Absolutely. I will now pass it along to Avery McGuire to discuss an announcement from the HIPAA office.
Hi, thanks, Erin. Ours is just a quick couple of minutes, just a general reminder. Some of this, or some of you may have already completed this. We are in the process of sending out notifications and reminders to everyone to make sure that you've gone ahead and completed your HIPAA compliance course through Skillsoft. That needs to be completed, and we're aiming to have that completed by June 30th of this year. Some of you very likely have already gone ahead and gotten that completed through Skillsoft. If you haven't, you'll likely be receiving an email here in the next couple of days that looks exactly like what Lori is showing you all right now, just letting you know to go in and try and get that completed. What you will be looking for when you go into Skillsoft is that specific course that we see listed in this email, where it's just the CU HIPAA regulations is the specific course you'll be looking for. I want to point that out, since there are a handful of other Skillsoft courses that do have HIPAA in their title. So just make sure that you're looking at that CU HIPAA regulations one. And again, if you've already had it completed, good on you. Nothing to worry about. And if you haven't, it doesn't take too long to get completed. And I think that's all we had on our end.
Thank you so much. Is this an annual training cycle, or is this just a one-time?
It'll be annual, yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Erin.
All right, I will now hand it over to a quick addition. Kirsten Rail, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Kirsten, has a quick announcement for us from UC Health Recruit.
Yes, thanks, Erin. Let me get my slides up here. So, okay. So today, there are a number of process updates that we have made to our recruit program. So starting today, Tuesday, May 16th, we have several new recruit processes that are going into effect. We are currently having a webinar that provides an overview of what all of those new processes include. And we will have this webinar posted on the UC Health Research Administration website, so study teams can view it. Just really quickly, the webinar discusses the recruit surveys results. It also introduces our new educational tools and opportunities that we've created. We have new tip sheets, changes to our websites, and learning assistants that we're creating to assist study teams use recruit tools. We also have created a new UC Health newsletter for clinical researchers. We're sending that out via email on Tuesdays every other week. We have currently sent out 2 of them so far. If you have not received the UC Health newsletter, please go to the Research Administration website and you can subscribe. We will begin using this newsletter as our primary method for providing news and updates regarding everything related to clinical research with UC Health. So I encourage you to subscribe if you have not received this already. Just a brief overview of the recruit processes that are going into effect. And this is really important to those that are currently using recruit tools. We've created a streamlined approach to the type of recruitment. We're using treatment versus no treatment relationships for the recruit tools. We've made updates to our research study coordinator dashboard and its functionality. We have changed our enrollment statuses. We now have 12 different enrollment statuses for study teams to use. We have a new optional Epic task tracking that we've created that study teams can use to track when they've contacted a potential participant or can use to reassign a potential participant to another region for studies where multiple regions are involved. We've also updated our request form. So if you have previously bookmarked our request form, that link is no longer going to work. We do have a new request form that's more streamlined. We are no longer asking for study eligibility criteria in the recruit request form. We will be obtaining that from Encore. In addition to that, the research recruitment scripts will also be included in the request form and no longer need to be emailed to research administration. In addition, we have updated our interested button response rule. It used to be that we required study teams to respond within 3 days to interested responses. We are now extending that to 5 business days. And then again, we have for our e-consent tool, we now have a way for study teams to e-consent potential participants in person, in clinics, in the emergency department, and in inpatient units with the Topaz signature pad. So we have educational tools to help study teams that would like to use e-consent in these type of environments. So again, all of this information is provided in the recruit process update webinar that will be available to all study teams on the research administration SharePoint page starting this afternoon. Finally, I just wanted to let everyone know that we're starting a monthly live instructional session for recruit tools to present information and step-by-step processes to study teams with different aspects of recruitment. So our first one is going to be Tuesday, June 6th from noon to 1. And you can register for this Recruit Live instructional session by going to the Research Administration website. Or you can use this link, which will also be available after today's CRC meeting. And then finally, you can always schedule a meeting to discuss options for studies specific recruit tools using the link on our research SharePoint page, or you can always just send us a quick email to research administration, or you can send an email directly to Lori, Marissa, or myself. So that's what I wanted to share with everybody today about our recruit program. And again, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. Thanks, Erin.
Thank you so much, Kirsten. This library of tools for Recruit just seems to be growing. This is fantastic work. Are there any questions before we move on regarding UC Health Recruit? Okay, then I will turn it over to Ben Achalier and Jema Bettis to talk a little bit about the Recruitment Center before we wrap up.
Thanks, Erin.
Okay.
Here we go. So we're just going to give a pretty high level quick update on what we're doing on the university side as far as recruitment is concerned. So you just heard from Kirsten on some of the resources that UCH is providing. And so we're going to talk about some consolidation of resources and also kind of thinking about what other resources would be useful when it comes to clinical trial recruitment. Jamie, do you want to go? Yeah. So I just mentioned this, but we're looking at consolidating and optimizing the existing central resources for clinical trial recruitment, and then engaging with study teams and investigators to explore any gaps or additional needs that you may have in regards to recruitment. We hope to offer some sort of recruitment planning service in the near future. And all of this work is a collaboration with a bunch of other groups on campus, including the CCTSI, regulatory compliance, communications, and diversity, equity, inclusion, and community engagement. So these are existing resources that we have and that we're working on. And so we do have a new webpage there that kind of consolidates these resources. The Research Studies website, I think most of you are familiar with if you're managing study through Encore and for your investigator. We won't go into a lot of detail about that. I know that Matt presented on the Research Studies website recently at the Clinical Research Connection meeting a few months ago. We are piloting some social media options. There are existing paid options with third-party agencies that people are using on campus. We are also piloting a process to allow investigators to do it locally without the added cost of a third-party agency, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then there's also Research Match, which Jema will talk about briefly. So this is, again, the Research Studies website. Yeah, we'll breeze past, but so I'll hand over to Jema. She's going to talk about social media.
So I'll go ahead and jump in. For those who have not met me or I have not had the chance to meet, my name is Jema Bettis. I'm the Research Special Projects Manager for the Clinical Research Operations Support or CROSS office. So one thing that we are investigating is how to best utilize social media for human subjects recruitment. So we, like Ben mentioned, in collaboration with some fantastic groups, including the Office of Communications, Regulatory Compliance, and CCTSI, have supported 4 studies thus far, and we already have 2 additional studies down the pipeline. So we're currently utilizing Facebook and Instagram for these advertisements. Currently, we are asking study teams to provide the budget to cover the cost of those ads. However, the price for this is much lower than some of the other third-party agencies. So we're hoping that this could be a great option for teams that may not have as much funding for recruitment. We do have some limitations based on Facebook's guidelines and terms and standards. As some of you may know, the social media landscape has changed drastically, even just over the past 3 or 4 years. So many advertising strategies that teams have used in the past are not viable anymore. Hence us exploring several different pilots to see how we can effectively navigate the new social media landscape. And then, of course, we must abide by the CU Answered social media guidelines. Those are also available on our website if you need a refresher. And our steps are to complete the remaining pilots, review and assess that data, and gradually, hopefully roll this out as a service available across campus for study teams. So to dive into some of the data that we have thus far, in our first pilot, we received a lot of interest. Nearly 30 study teams reached out interested in participating. For that first pilot, we did have several restrictions. Given that it was the first pilot, we wanted to stay away from controversial topics or topics that may get our account immediately flagged. So several were screened out for that first pilot, and they did end up thus far enrolling 5 participants from social media advertisements. So that total cost was around $80 per enrolled participant. But again, that was the very first pilot. So the aim is to get the price down. And it is also dependent, of course, on your inclusion and exclusion criteria. The nice thing about these advertisements, despite some of the challenges that we have to navigate with new guidelines, is we are really able to expand our reach and strategically target different demographics depending on those criteria. And then last but not least, as Ben mentioned, Research Match is a service that is available. It's an NIH-funded resource for researchers, and it allows you to connect with people interested in research across the nation. With Research Match, you can also define your parameters if you need a certain geographic area, a certain diagnosis. So you're able to filter much more directly than through Facebook or Instagram. And it's free. So that's a great resource that you can utilize for free. And we are actively talking to teams across campus, trying to get an idea of what is needed, what gaps are out there, ideas, opportunities to collaborate. We are open and excited about all of it. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can reach out to Ben or you can reach out to me directly. You can also check out our website and the link is available there for you. And we're happy to answer any questions.
I have a quick question. Are you planning an additional pilot, or are you planning to go ahead and launch using this data?
That's a great question, Erin. So we are planning to complete 2 more pilots, and then we will be reviewing all of the data from the pilots and presenting more robust data once we're able to analyze all of the pilots.
Excellent, thank you. And you mentioned inclusion exclusion criteria as a factor to how financially viable the use of these social media tools might be for a research study. Is there anything else that study teams that's popped up so far? I'm sure more information will matriculate later, but is there anything else that study teams should keep an eye out for when thinking about using social media or engaging with your office for their research?
I would say that our office has a lot of great resources to get you started on the right foot. I do also want to clarify, even if your inclusion and exclusion criteria are very specific, that doesn't necessarily mean that social media isn't the best avenue. It's very dependent on your target audience and what your budget is. So I would definitely encourage you to utilize the guidelines that we have available on our website and to reach out to us with questions. Like Ben mentioned, our goal in the future is to offer recruitment consults. so that you'll be able to schedule with us directly and talk about all the specifics of your study, because it is so dependent on so many different factors. It's hard to give generalized advice in some ways for social media strategies, but we are happy to discuss this further with teams and learn from what teams are already doing or gaps that they've identified. Again, please reach out.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Jema and Ben, for sharing. I think that this is going to be an incredibly useful tool, and I know it's still early days, so I really appreciate you taking the time to share your work on this. So that brings us to the end of our presenters for the day. Thank you very much to all of our presenters who joined us. Next time on Clinical Research Connections, which will be Tuesday, June 20th from 12 to 1. We'll be hearing from John Heldens, Lori Bloomberg Romero, and Deb Barnard on research consent and clinical trials billing. They will take the entire presentation, but I would highly encourage everybody who is able to attend, because I think that's going to be really, really valuable information that they'll be sharing. Registration links for summer sessions of Clinical Research Connections will be posted on the website soon, but I will go ahead and share the direct link in the chat for you. The registration links will also be sent out via email as well. To view previous recordings of Clinical Research Connections, and very soon you'll be able to find the registration links for the summer sessions on there as well. You can visit the Clinical Research Operations Support website, and I've shared the link to that in the chat. The slides and recording will also be sent out at the end of the week. So without further ado, I will let everybody have 8 minutes back in their hour, which I'm sure we could all use. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining, and have a great afternoon.